Dr. Elizabeth Hafer wants you to get your head on straight. In a world gone sideways, having balance and integrity in all areas of life leads to having confidence that breeds clarity. Clarity is essential to living an authentic life, and all the information shared on the Get Your Head On Straight podcast is designed to inspire you to live your life fulfilled. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Get Your Head On Straight with Dr. Elizabeth Hafer. Today, my guest is an outstanding member of the Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic Society. In fact, he is the president. I am so excited to interview Dr. Drew Hall today about his passion for Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic and have him share his personal testimony on what led him to lead this amazing organization. Welcome to the show, Dr. Hall.
Thanks, Dr. Hafer. I'm excited to be on the show with you.
Me too.
You're quite a firecracker in the upper cervical movement, so I'm looking forward to the interview and see what you're going to ask me.
Well, I appreciate that. And you know what? I think that we both can relate to the fact that when your life gets healed and when your life gets changed through this work, it makes you so passionate you'll stop at nothing to make sure that every single person on the planet knows about it, right?
That's absolutely true. You mean like being in the restaurant and overhearing someone in the booth behind you talking about how they suffer from migraine headaches, and then going over there and saying, ma'am, you know, I couldn't help but overhear you talking about your suffering. I've got to tell you some information. Is that what you're talking about?
Pretty much. Or when you're walking down the street and you see somebody bent over sideways and you just know that you can help them, and you go up to them and tell them, here's my card, you need to call me.
I don't want to get this too far off track, but there's this guy that lives up in Palos Verdes, and I believe he's homeless, and you see him walking down the sidewalk. I see him probably once a week, and he literally, his head is horizontal to the ground, and he's looking straight down. His upper thoracic spine's completely bent over. And the rest of the world says, I'm not sure how that happened, why that guy's like that, but when you do upper cervical work, you know how that happens.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so I want to start with the most recent thing that we have been discussing, which is this incredible picture that you posted on Facebook the other day with an atlas that was literally facing the wrong direction. Like the tip of her posterior arch was basically touching her skull. Tell me about that case, and tell me about what happened after you gave her a Blair upper cervical correction in your office.
So actually that patient was referred in by two students from Life Chiropractic College West. It's a friend of theirs. But anyway, this poor girl's 26. She's been basically suicidal and has amazingly large swings emotionally up and down. And so anyway, we do what we always do in the office, both of us. We ran her through a bunch of tests and determined she had interference at the cord level. And so we took a series of x-rays, and her lateral x-ray, for those of you who are visual, there should be a somewhat equidistant space between the first cervical vertebra and the floor of the skull and the C2. And her atlas was literally, the back part of the atlas was jammed against the floor of the skull. And so when I saw that x-ray, literally my heart broke a little bit, because I know what that gal's probably been through her whole life. So we do what we can do. We put her on the table and we got her adjusted. And in fact, I just got a text from her this morning. She said her mental fog has lifted for the first time in quite some while. But generally, when you see these really severe chronic cases, they're a little bit reluctant and rejoicing because they've been let down so many times. So she's already noticing all sorts of things for the positive, and my prediction is in 2 years she'll be in chiropractic school.
That's amazing. I want you to send me that picture. I'm going to actually tag it to this podcast, because I want people to be able to go onto the link, drhafer.com, and see the picture of this poor girl's spine. And I completely agree. She will be in chiropractic school, because when something like that happens and your mind is healed and nothing that you've ever tried or done has been able to help you until something like a Blair upper cervical correction, you have to do that for the rest of your life. And that is exactly what my story was. And when you texted me and you said, this girl is you 15 years ago, I was so excited. And the only thing that I kept thinking was, when we look at an x-ray, when a Blair upper cervical doctor looks at an x-ray and we see something like that, we know exactly what to do to fix it. And that is part of the reason why I'm sharing these testimonies and sharing these stories, is so that the students can get excited to understand that when you study this work and you learn it, you won't have any question about what you're going to do. You know what you're going to do.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't imagine making corrections in the upper spine without knowing exactly what's going on there when you understand the gravity of how important the brainstem is to overall body function. But to follow up on, I didn't finish your entirety of your question. Just because I was curious, she literally came back 24 hours later. I decided to take a post-lateral x-ray on her just because I was curious if after one correction that there was a shift in the position of the atlas, and sure enough, and we can send this picture to you also, literally 24 hours later, there was space between the back part of her head and her atlas, which is just proof that we actually are moving a vertebra that's locked out of position and putting it back into motion. And of course, now next month it's her body's job to unwind and heal and repair all the damage that's been done over there over the entirety of her life due to that problem.
That's absolutely outstanding. And that thing that you were just referring to, her body's job, we call that innate intelligence. And that is what we understand to be the ability for our bodies to heal from the inside out. And that is simply what we're unlocking whenever we do a Blair Upper Cervical correction.
Absolutely. I remember many times going to chiropractic colleges and saying, when you do something so simple and so light and so precise as we do, and you see such profound changes happen in so many people, a lot of times, if you're not careful, you can start to take credit for, oh, I healed this person, oh, I'm great, and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, as Dr. Hafer, you just mentioned, it's that inborn wisdom that exists inside the body that does the healing. And really all that we're doing is we're putting a vertebra back into motion where it should be and allowing what's already there to do what it's supposed to do. That's the power of what we do.
It's so simple, above, down, inside out. So I want to know, how did you get into becoming a chiropractor? What is your personal story leading you to being the president of the Blair Society? And I think you've told me, I think it's over 9,000 patients that you've processed in your years of practice. So can you kind of take me back to the beginning and tell me what was going on?
Absolutely. But you said this is going to be 20 minutes. I'm not so sure.
Well, it'll take what it takes.
Okay, so here's my upper cervical story, my whole reason for being in this lifetime. I was 17, I was a junior in high school, and I was on the varsity baseball team, and after practice I got in a little wrestling match with a buddy of mine, like boys do, and I was losing, and he literally had me upside down above the pitcher's mound, lost his grip on me, and dropped me flat on my head. And I'd been dropped on my head before, like most boys. But this drop, I was completely upside down. And when I landed, I literally bounced off my head. And upon impact, I heard a big type motion noise at the base of my skull. And of course, first thing that flashed through my mind was, I hope I'm not paralyzed. So I rolled over and I stood up, and I wasn't paralyzed, and I didn't have any pain. And I figured nothing happened because I didn't have the information that we have or our kids have. First thing someone would have done that had the awareness of the importance of the upper neck and what happened at that moment of time would have literally gone to their car and driven straight to their upper cervical chiropractor. But because I didn't have the awareness, and side note, that's our whole goal of the Blair Upper Cervical Society, is to get this information and awareness out into the public over the next decade or two. But anyway, I went through the rest of the day. I went to bed, pretty much forgot about it. And slowly, over about a 6-month period, I developed headaches, and I started having problems cognitively. I started having trouble with reading comprehension and recall and testing. My energy over time decreased. And because this was slow and it was episodic, I never connected the dots, again, because I didn't have the awareness. And so as I was spiraling down health-wise, obviously I knew there was a problem, but I didn't tell anyone, and I didn't know why it was happening. Because it was slow and episodic, I pretty much every day told myself, oh, it'll eventually go away. And a year later, I found myself with depression, and I ached from head to toe throughout my body. I had nausea every day for the next year and a half, and heart palpitations, numbness down my left arm. I developed carpal tunnel in both of my wrists, and no, I didn't type at a computer all day. And so that's half the story. I basically got to a point in my life. It's one thing when you feel bad off and on, you have time to recover, but I was, for the better year and a half, where every single moment I was awake, I felt like absolute garbage. And when I went to bed at night, I knew exactly what the next day was going to bring, and that tends to wear on you. I kind of tell patients an analogy. It's like laying on your back and someone's stacking bricks on you, and they keep getting heavier and heavier, and no one's taking them off. That's where I was at. And so I started having suicidal thoughts, and I'd never obviously experienced that in my life, but when that starts to happen, you know you're in trouble. So that was really the impetus to me saying something to my parents. And so I told my mom, I said, Mom, I don't know what the heck's going on, but I'm having suicidal thoughts, and this is how I felt for the last year and a half. And if you saw me at that time, I looked the picture of health. I didn't look sick. And so, of course, my mom was a little shocked, but obviously she was supportive. And so we did what most Americans would do. We went from doctor to doctor to doctor. Some of them were good people, but they didn't know what was going on. Some of them were complete jerks. And basically one of them told me that everything I was dealing with was all in my head because all of the testing showed nothing was wrong. So that kind of parlays into, I might as well just briefly talk about this. Medicine is really good at dealing with acute situations, but when it comes to chronic health conditions, there's not much that can be done. And so instead of being told, Drew, we've run all these medical tests and we really don't know what's wrong with you, and we've done all that we can do, and maybe you should go to an alternative type of health paradigm and seek out a different practitioner to try and help. No, I was told that it was all in my head and go see a psychiatrist, which obviously, am I allowed to say this, pissed me off. I was pissed. I mean, here I was 18 and a half, 19, and I felt like a truck ran over me, and I'm at the low point in my life, and I basically get told by someone that all of my problems are psychosomatic. So at that point, I basically said the hell with medicine, and we got to a homeopath and an acupuncturist. Awesome people, helped lots of people, but in my case really didn't do much. But thank God, instead of telling me, oh, well, there's nothing that can be done about this, we've done our homeopathy and acupuncture, they said, you need to go see an upper cervical chiropractor. And so the homeopath sent me to Dr. Tom Forrest in San Francisco Bay Area. And to be honest, I was a little reluctant just because of the common notion that's held out there about chiropractic. Oh, am I going to get a stroke? Am I going to get paralyzed? I was a little freaked out, because of what I knew of chiropractic was someone takes your head and twists it left and right. But I was at the end of my road, and I was willing to try anything. So I drove 30 minutes down to Dr. Forrest's office. I remember sitting in a chair and him explaining upper cervical chiropractic to me, and me thinking, oh my God, that makes so much sense. How come no one else has told me this? But then in the back of my head was, well, this sounds too good to be true. And so Dr. Forrest ran me through a battery of tests, took some pictures. In my particular case, he put me left side up and made a correction on my axis, which was up and forward to the left, and a atlas, which was also up and forward to the left. And it was so quick, and all I heard was a big loud noise in my ear. And after he made the correction, I'm like, really? That's it? How the hell is that going to do anything? But again, I was hopeful because the rationale and the reasoning behind the upper cervical work made sense. So he put me in the rest area for about 25 minutes. I laid there and was done, got in my car, drove home. And I remember thinking, I don't feel anything. I feel absolutely no different than I did before I was adjusted. But I got to continue with this because it made sense. And so I went to bed that night. And for me, I was go to bed at 10. If I fell asleep at 1 for 2 years, it was a good night. And it was also a good night if I slept for 2 hours at a time. And it was also a good night if one of those hours I actually felt like I slept. So basically for 2 years, I laid in bed for 8 to 9 hours a night and never got into that deep, restful sleep. So I went to bed that night. It was the first night in over 2.5 years I actually slept. And not only did I sleep straight through the night, when I woke up, I realized that I didn't remember falling asleep. And of course, that if something's going to get your attention, that sure as hell will. So I had hope, and I think that's one of the most powerful things about upper cervical Blair work is it has such broad-reaching and far-reaching effects on the system that when someone walks in your office, it doesn't matter what they come in with, because when you affect the central nervous system, you're affecting the whole system. And when people that have been chronically ill, like myself, for 2.5 years, you get that first window of, oh my God, I think maybe I can get better. That changes everything. And it wasn't an easy road, as you know, when you've been chronically ill. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and I went through all sorts of ups and downs in my recovery process, but I'm here to tell you that Upper Cervical Blair Chiropractic and Dr. Tom Forrest completely and radically changed my life, and that's my mission till I take my last breath.
It's absolutely incredible to hear your story. And I remember when I was a student at Palmer College of Chiropractic, I saw a video of your testimony when I was halfway through my education. And I remember looking at that and thinking, that is too good to be true. And it went in one ear and it went out another ear. And it wasn't until a year and a half later that I was at my wit's end that I also had an upper cervical experience that radically changed my life. And that is why I also am a warrior in this with you, to be able to bring the truth to people who are suffering, needlessly suffering. So when was it that you decided you wanted to go to chiropractic college?
That's an interesting story. You would think after having that recovery, you would have no other choice, but, and this sounds completely insane now that I look back, what kept me from wanting to go to chiropractic school is like, oh my God, I don't want to go through 3.5 more years of school, right? Because I was at UC Davis as a geology undergraduate major. But to make a really long story short, I was 6 months from graduating. And of course, I thought about doing it the whole time, but I was in Dr. Forrest's office and they asked me to write a testimony. So I wrote this 2.5-page testimony, 3/4 of which they probably didn't even know had transpired inside of me. Like we don't, right? How often do we have patients that come in, they've been a patient for 9 months and you're like, how come you keep coming in here? And then they like just download all this stuff and you're like, oh my God, I had no idea. So I was in Dr. Forrest's office and his wife, Chris, said, you know, Drew, have you ever thought about being a chiropractor? And I said, well, of course I've thought about it. It changed my whole life. And that was about as far as the conversation went. And so I go back to UC Davis. I just registered for all of my classes. And it was probably 5 days after that brief conversation. I was walking home from school. And all I can tell you is I had an epiphany. It was like I got hit from above down. And it was like, no, you're going to chiropractic. No, I don't want to go to chiropractic. I don't want to be in school 3.5 more. No, you're going to chiropractic school. And I literally, it was such a strong experience. I don't want to get too off the deep end here for you listeners, but I literally, when I got home, I got on and canceled all my classes and signed up for biology, anatomy, organic chemistry, and 6 months later I was in chiropractic college. Much to my parents' dismay, because college isn't cheap and I was 4 classes from getting my BS degree. But it was one of those forks in the road where I knew this was exactly what I was supposed to be doing, and I didn't want to waste 6 more months, and boom, I went for it.
That's absolutely incredible. I just read a proverb the other day. One of my buddies wrote this incredible book, Timeless Truths, and the proverb basically said, if you want to find your purpose in life, you have to look at your wounds. And that has been so true in my life, where all of the dysfunction and all of the pain and all of the heartache and trauma that I've lived through has been the very thing that has made me a better chiropractor, because I can relate. And I know that that sense of purpose that you got walking home from college that day was the destiny that you have in your life to do this thing called Blair Upper Cervical. So now fast forward, you've been in practice 16 years. Is that correct?
Let's see, August 2001. So where are we? Yeah, so 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years. It's coming up on 16 years. That's
mind-blowing for me.
It's amazing, right? Because it goes so quick. I've been in practice 8 years now, and I don't even understand how that's possible, because I feel like I just graduated college and I just got to Southern California. So anyways, you have taken on like 9,000 new patients. And what is the thing that keeps driving you? Like to get up every day and to go tell that story again and again. What is it?
It's the week in and week out. Of course, we're not God and it's not the cure-all for everything, but it's those cases like we opened up this podcast with. It's the people out there that are about ready to stick a gun in their mouth, that are chronically ill and suffering. In many of those cases, there's only one thing that's going to turn that case around. And I think, and you probably had these thoughts before, it's kind of overwhelming to think about all the people on this planet Earth that are in that situation that will never actually find the answer.
Right.
I often think about what would have happened to me if I didn't get my atlas and axis corrected by Dr. Forrest. My life would be 1/50th, if it would exist at this point, of what it was. So there are lots of people out there who are out of alignment that would benefit from what we do, and of course we want to correct them, but there are also a percentage out there who are not living at all. They're living in hell, and it's because their atlas has been knocked out of position, is locked under their skull, and is hanging them slowly.
Right.
And there's only one thing on planet Earth that'll get those people back to where they should be. That's what drives me.
That's awesome. And so because of that, you have taken on the role as president of the Blair Chiropractic Society.
I'm not so sure that I took on that role. It was forced upon me.
Well, no matter how you inherited the role, you've run with it. And in the last few years, the organization has gotten a lot more focused, a lot more efficient. And I know that the Blair Society kind of mission vision is to have a Blair chiropractor in every community of the world. And the way that we're going to go about doing that is by educating students that they can practice this, take it to their community, and sell truth and hope. So what do you want listeners to hear about the Blair Chiropractic Society to help them understand that if they have questions, if they need to have some hope, what do you want them to know about the Blair Society?
I mean, the whole purpose of the Blair Society was multi-pronged, but the Blair Society was set up in the early 80s by a couple of very dedicated Blair Upper Cervical doctors, which at the time, I believe in the state of California, there were something like less than 10 people practicing the work. And so their whole goal in setting the society up was they're going to die. They wanted the work to live on. And so Dr. Muncie and Dr. Forrest and Dr. Harkins and Dr. Toppin and some of the old-time doctors put together, and Dr. Addington, the society would outlive us. So I look at Dr. Hafer, you and I, and some of the other people at the board as kind of the third tier of people. We're going to die too. It's good to see the Blair Society growing. So our main purpose and vision of Blair is to protect the technique and to evolve the technique when it's prudent, to do research, and to raise public awareness. We have 99.8% of the globe that doesn't even know what upper cervical chiropractic is. And so that's one of our main mission, is to raise public awareness. So the stories that we told you, our own personal ones and the ones we've seen in our office, so that at least the people in the public that are suffering, they'll have the information, and then it's their job to make the decision what they want to do with it. But as of now, there isn't even the awareness. So that's our whole driving force. Any of you listeners, of course, we're a nonprofit. We grow by donation of time and donation of money. We don't want to get into this too much, but we have a scoliosis study going on at McGill University right now. Our long-term vision, I mean, I'd like to see a Blair Upper Cervical School on every continent. I'd like to see research centers. You know, one of the biggest things that we see, people say, well, if what you do is so great, how come there's no research? Well, we don't get millions of dollars of funding through NIH and government entities. So largely the way that we grow is through donation of money from doctors, from outside sources, and at the end of the day, money is what drives growth. And I think from a Blair Society standpoint, we've got a lot of good, dedicated people on the board. We've got an amazing person running the society that we've hired, and we're at the first inning in a 9-inning game. And before I die and you die, Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic will be known in this world, period.
100% agreed with you, Dr. Hall. I'm so excited that you were on my podcast today. For those of you listening who want more information about the Blair Society, you can go to www.blairchiropractic.com. And if you have any questions, you can go there, locate a doctor. If you're wondering if there's a Blair doctor near you, you can locate a doctor and find out how close there is somebody. If you have questions or you'd like to donate, you can do that through the website. And we're excited that you have interest in this, because literally this is going to change the world. Dr. Hall, your story is absolutely incredible. I'm inspired daily by your passion, by your dedication. And for the last 10 years, I've been inspired, and I'm just going to keep working hard to grow this thing we call Blair Chiropractic, because we both know that it changes people's lives. and it's literally going to heal the world one atlas at a time. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I hope you guys are having a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to Get Your Head On Straight with Dr. Elizabeth Hafer. Visit wellconnectedchiro.com for more details from the show blog post and to learn what Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic can do for you. To learn more about Dr. Hafer and her practice, you can find her at Well Connected Chiropractic in Mission Viejo, California by visiting wellconnectedchiro.com for more information.